Welcome to Loving Life, a guide to a positive mindset. I'm your host, Lisa. I'm a mindset and energy coach, and each week you'll discover mindset shifts, energy practices, and real life tools to help you feel more confident, calm, and in flow, because you deserve to love the life you're creating. I'm so glad you're here with me. Let's get going on today's episode. Welcome back to Loving Life. Welcome to June. Can you believe we are in June? Now, obviously I'm British. I'm going to do the very British thing of talking about the weather. Last week we had the most beautiful weather. We had a heat wave, in fact. It was bloody lovely. I loved it. This week, it's been raining all week. How rude. What a difference it makes to your energy levels, to your motivation. And it's my birthday on Saturday. Now, my mum always says it always rains at some point on my birthday, every single year. And my birthday is on the 6th of June. Now, this isn't completely true because there have been a few years that I can remember that it hasn't rained, and it has been absolutely gorgeous. But I will say, on the whole, it does tend to rain on my birthday. Now, I don't like to say that because I almost feel like by saying that, I'm manifesting it. But, you know, I cannot argue with what the weather report says, and it's not looking great, shall we say. But we don't need the weather. This is me trying to convince myself now. Anyway, how are you? How have you been coping since the full moon? So I was away on the weekend. I was at a hen weekend, which if you are from the US, it's what you know as a bachelorette party. But we were away for the weekend. And so it's full moon on Sunday. And it's so funny because I woke up. I don't really tend to sleep that well when I'm away from home or if I've had a few drinks, and I did have a couple of drinks. I made the best espresso martinis for everybody, actually. Not going to lie, they were amazing. But after I've had a few drinks, I don't tend to sleep very well. But on Sunday morning, I woke up at about 3:45. I remember looking at my phone at 3:45, and I could not, for the life of me, get back to sleep for what felt like about an hour. And when we woke up in the morning, I spoke to some of the other girls, and they also said they woke up at about 10 to 4, around 4 o'clock. Everybody seems to wake up around that time and couldn't get back to sleep again. So, you know, what I was saying last week about like half of those people didn't even realise it was full moon. Like, that's not their thing. They didn't realise it was full moon. They don't know what effects the full moon has on you. But it just goes to show that you don't need to know about it for it to have an effect on you. Like, I was really surprised. I spoke to at least 5 other girls who woke up around that time. So anyway, that actually links very nicely to what I want to talk about today, because I have been on lots of different social events recently. So that is very much what I want to talk about today. It's about dealing with or managing your energy in those times, in those heavy social times, especially when you're not used to it like me. But before we do that, let's just take a look and see which city had the most amount of downloads. This is cities, not countries. I don't know if I made my point last week, but the city with the most amount of downloads, you're never going to believe it. It was Sydney again, followed by LA in California, and then Bristol. So thank you, wherever you listen from. I truly appreciate your support. And if you can think of one person who would enjoy any of the episodes you've listened to recently, why not share it with them? It's really easy to do that. You literally just go into wherever you listen to your podcasts, click on an episode, click on the share button, which is up on my iPhone. It's on the top right hand corner, and either copy the link or literally share it with whoever comes up in WhatsApp. I would really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to what I want to talk about today. So I was originally going to call this episode How to Navigate Social Events as an Introvert, because I very much identify with lots of the introvert ways, shall we say? But I've changed it because this isn't just about being an introvert, because I know I can think of many of you who might not identify with that. So how to navigate social events, whatever you are, whoever you are. So like I said, I've been at lots of lovely social events recently, but they really drain my energy. I am not going to lie. And I did a reel on this a couple of weeks ago. You might have seen it on my Instagram. But I'd been out in the morning, had a bloody lovely morning, but I was with a group of like 6 people, talking all morning, obviously, engaging with people all morning. I was home by 1. I was bloody knackered and I was in bed and in my pajamas by 2 o'clock. I didn't stay there the whole day. I just want to make that clear. But yeah, that's what it made me want to do. I came home like a zombie and Craig was like, go and get yourself into bed and go and have a nap. But before I knew it, I was putting my pajamas on and I think I actually worked from my bed, had my laptop in bed that day. But yeah, like that's just what socializing does to me. Now, people often misunderstand the meaning of being an introvert completely. It often gets mixed up with shyness, with anxiety, with being awkward or not liking people. But those things are nothing to do with being an introvert. Being an introvert is more about energy management than personality. It doesn't mean that introverts don't like socializing. Introverts tend to love deep conversations and enjoy like meaningful connection. They can even be confident speakers or podcasters. They can be outgoing or bubbly, and they can even love performing, teaching, hosting. But afterwards, they often feel like their internal battery has been completely drained. For me, like, especially if I think back to that day that I was telling you about from a few weeks ago, like my eyes change. My pupils dilate. It's really weird. But my complexion changes as well. Like I physically drain, like almost like the life has drained from me. But you know, like when you put your makeup on and you still look pale as a ghost, that's what happens to me. And I just need to sleep. Now, the key thing that I want to point out here is that with introverts, social interaction costs energy rather than creates it. It's like you are almost giving away your energy, whereas extroverts often gain energy from being around others. And I will go into more about extroverts later on in the episode. But then you have ambiverts, which is a mix of both. And actually sometimes what I resonate with, because I definitely have traits of being an introvert and traits of being an extrovert. So ambivert is sort of in the middle and identify with both. So ambiverts can enjoy being around people and still need lots of recovery time. You might be outgoing in the right environment, so whatever right means to you. You might sway between let's go out and please nobody talk to me for 3 working days. And then also your energy depends on who you're with, how safe you feel. And if you've listened to my recent episodes, you'll know exactly what I mean by safety. I mean nervous system safety. I don't mean physically safe, but the environment, the noise levels, the emotional load, and whether you feel the need to mask in whatever situation you're in. And I feel like I'm just talking about myself now. I'm giving you a little insight into, I don't know, what it's like in my head, in my body. But many of you will resonate with this. Some of you definitely won't. But being an introvert and an empath, and when I say empath, I mean like feeling other people's emotions, like physically feeling other people's emotions, that can double the drain. So if you are socially engaging. You are always like reading the room. You tend to notice shifts in like tone or energy really quickly and find yourself staying present for others. This is something I really noticed about myself on the weekend. Like, put me in a house of most of the people in that house. I only knew literally like 2 people there really. But I am there. If I'm there, I'm there. Do you know what I mean? Like, I barely touched my phone all weekend because I want to be present. I do love socializing with people. I do love getting to know people. But this often leads to me like processing long afterwards, not in a critical way at all, but like there's lots of processing that goes on in my head. So there is like a huge difference between being socially anxious, being shy, being emotionally overwhelmed, and being overstimulated. These are all completely separate, and they actually have nothing to do with whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. People can overlap between those categories, but they are not the same thing. So, for example, an introvert can still enjoy public speaking, but they need silence. They might need silence afterwards. An extrovert can still have social anxiety. Someone can be confident and introverted. And someone can love people deeply, but still need lots of time alone. Now, like I said, I don't want to just focus on introverts today because I can think of a number of you who I've spoken to in the past who may resonate with the more extrovert side. So, and I just want to point out that neither introvert or extrovert is better. Neither one of them is a better person. They are just simply different ways that we as human beings process energy, process stimulation and connection. So introverts recharge internally. Extroverts recharge externally. Both still need connection. Both still need rest. Both can become overwhelmed. They just reach for energy very differently. So whereas introverts might feel drained after lots of social interaction, extroverts feel energized being around people. Introverts need alone time to reset and enjoy quieter environments, whereas extroverts might feel flat or low if they're isolated for too long. Like, extroverts probably would struggle doing the job that I do because I am very much in my room on my own. You know, I'm talking to myself whilst I'm talking to you doing this podcast. I am talking to myself. It doesn't feel like I'm talking to myself. It does feel like I'm talking to you. But do you know what I mean? Like, that would make an extrovert feel drained. Whilst introverts process internally before speaking, extroverts process externally and often think out loud. Introverts can become overwhelmed by too much stimulation, whereas extroverts enjoy faster paced or stimulating environments. Introverts can feel drained and need recovery time after busy events, whereas extroverts often feel motivated through connection and activity. So can you see how it's nothing to do with how confident you are, how nervous you feel? Like, everybody can feel confident, everyone can feel anxious, everyone can feel nervous. It's about how you process and how you motivate yourself. But obviously, where introverts and extroverts differ so much, I think it's worth exploring how both those types of people can misunderstand each other. So an introvert might think, how the hell do you have the energy for this? I know I find myself thinking that a lot. How are you still talking? Why do you want to make more plans? Whereas an extrovert might think, why are you withdrawing? Why don't you want to come out? Why are you so quiet? And neither is wrong. They are just wired differently. So some things to bear in mind, some points to bear in mind that I find quite interesting is that stress can exaggerate our natural tendencies. So if you're an introvert and you feel stressed, you might withdraw even more. If you're an extrovert and you're stressed, you might seek even more distraction. You might seek more social interaction or activity. Another thing to note that I find really interesting is that neither type is immune to loneliness, because introverts, because they need to reset by being on their own, they can become isolated. Whereas extroverts can surround themselves with people whilst avoiding themselves internally. Does that make sense? They are just different coping mechanisms. We all cope differently. Introverts often regulate through reducing stimulation, whereas extroverts often regulate through engagement, through movement. And it's funny, I often find myself at parties, and that makes it sound like I'm at a lot of parties and I'm not. But, at gatherings or when I'm out with people. But I often find myself going to the toilet and just sitting there and having a quiet moment to reset. That sounds really rude, but it's not being me. It's not being rude. It's me genuinely resetting my energy, just having a moment to myself. God knows what people think when I'm gone for a long time, but that is a way for me to cope with the stimulation, the extra stimulation that I'm not used to. That's how I cope with it. So I just want to have a look at what social situations introverts might prefer, and then I'm going to do the same with extroverts as well. So I just want to point out, this isn't because they can't handle others, but because these environments that I'm about to list feel less energetically fired up. I don't know. But introverts often prefer small gatherings, so they might prefer coffee with one friend or maybe two friends. They might prefer dinner with a small group. Anything with meaningful conversation. So they might often prefer walks on their own or cozy environments, because there's usually less noise, there's fewer conversations to track, and less pressure to perform socially. One caveat to that, I actually often find coffee with one friend. I'm sorry if you're a friend listening who I have coffee with, but I often find that really draining. And I don't mean any offense by that. It's where I am so involved and I am listening so intently. That drains me, because I am so there. That drains me. Do you know what I mean? So yeah. So sometimes one-on-one can actually be just as energetically draining as being with a group. I think it's just knowing what works for you, what you prefer and why. Introverts might prefer structured socializing. So what I mean by that is things like workshops or classes. They might like book clubs, guided activities or planned meetups with a purpose, because often there is less random social chaos. It's almost like you know what to expect. And like I said, those lower stimulation spaces, so going out for a walk, even going to the cinema, quiet restaurant, and creative activities, these often work well for introverts. Whereas extroverts often enjoy bigger group environments. So parties, networking, festivals, busy restaurants, group holidays. OMG, I literally could not think of anything worse than a group holiday. Actually, this reminds me of a conversation I've had with my friend stroke hairdresser. If you're listening, you probably know the exact conversation I'm talking about. But I literally could not think of anything worse than going on holiday and being in a group, or meeting people on holiday. I'm sorry, I'm not being rude, but I am there to enjoy my own company and my family's company. But I know that is because that is the introvert in me. Extroverts feel completely different. Like they have so much more fun when they're in a group, and that's okay. Because energy is created through interaction and momentum and stimulation for extroverts. They often prefer fast-paced social settings. So things like, they like to have variety. They like to have movement, dynamic conversation where you don't necessarily know what to expect. They prefer to have the excitement and maybe a bit of unpredictability. So where introverts might feel mentally full, extroverts might feel energized and alive. So they might also prefer team settings with work, like working in a team. Co-working would work for them. Brainstorming works well because they think out loud. And it's really important to point out here that these are just preferences and energy patterns. They are not rigid rules, because an introvert can absolutely enjoy a festival and an extrovert can love a quiet coffee shop. It's more about which environments naturally nourish you rather than deplete you. And after social interaction, there's the recovery period. So this looks different for both, obviously. So whereas introverts need time to decompress, they need silence, they need comfort, they need low stimulation and no decisions, no more talking. Whereas extroverts might recover by continuing the connection, so messaging people afterwards, reliving the event, making more plans, like excitement of making the next lot of plans and talking through the experience and actually just thinking about. And remember, being an introvert doesn't necessarily mean you're shy and anxious, as a lot of people mistakenly think. And being an extrovert doesn't necessarily mean you're confident and loud. Some are, some aren't. But remember I said earlier that extroverts often gain energy from being around others, whereas introverts lose energy. So because we are so different, I wanted to explore how introverts and extroverts can meet in the middle without trying to change each other. Because like I said, there is no right or wrong. This is about what we need to restore our energy. So tips for introverts navigating extroverts. Number 1 is to communicate your energy needs clearly, but not brutally. So instead of disappearing or cancelling vaguely, explain something along the lines of, I've loved spending time together, but I need a bit of quiet time to recharge. That sounds very different to, I need to go because I'm drained. Like, that can sound rude. And it's quite important to note that extroverts can sometimes interpret withdrawal as rejection. Anyone can, I guess. But I did recently see a reel, and it was kind of making a joke out of, it was like a group of women who, one of them stood up all of a sudden. They were like in a bar or something. And all of a sudden just went, right, I'm off. My social battery's gone. And I remember seeing that at the time and thinking that could actually be really rude. Like, there are going to be people that think, how fucking rude. Basically, don't be rude. Like, there is a polite way to explain your needs without being rude. Number 2 for introverts navigating extroverts or social situations, I guess, is don't force yourself to socialize past your limit. So many introverts often stay too long because of guilt, and then suddenly they become irritable, they become flat, they become overstimulated and disconnected. Have an exit plan, but again, don't be rude. And this is why it is so important to know your limits, because if you do get to the stage where you become irritable, overstimulated, disconnected, then of course that can be seen as rude. Number 3 is to build recovery time into your plans. This is huge. Know your limits. Know what you need. Not every weekend needs a Friday night dinner, a Saturday night birthday, a Sunday family gathering, and then Mondays pretending to be alive at work because you actually feel dead because you've done too much socializing. You have to build that recovery time into your plans if you are an introvert. And then number 4, don't label yourself as antisocial. It's really easy to see this as a character flaw. It's not. Needing solitude is not a character flaw. You can love people deeply and still need space from them. So don't label yourself as antisocial. Don't put yourself down. Okay, now tips for extroverts navigating introverts. Number 1 is don't take quietness personally. An introvert being quiet doesn't automatically mean they're upset or they're bored or they're angry or they are feeling awkward. Sometimes they are simply processing. Number 2 is understand that social energy works differently. An introvert might genuinely enjoy your company and still need alone time afterwards. These things can coexist. It doesn't mean they don't like you. They actually really love you. Number 3, give space without making it emotionally loaded. So avoid saying things like, you never come out, or you're boring, or why are you being quiet, or come on, have another, because this pressure can make introverts retreat even further. And then number 4, understand that depth may matter more than frequency. And what I mean by that is some introverts don't need constant contact to feel connected. A really deep, lovely, meaningful catch-up once a month might feel more fulfilling than daily interaction. And then tips for everybody, tips for both personality types. So number 1 is to stop assuming that your way is normal. Some people regulate through stillness, quietness, reflection, whereas others regulate through movement, conversation, and connection. People just have different nervous systems and different needs. Number 2, learn your social warning signs. So for introverts, this might be things like zoning out, irritability, exhaustion, and wanting to escape. For extroverts, this might be relentlessness, loneliness, boredom, and low mood after too much isolation. Number 3 is respect nervous system differences. So those different needs, those different emotional safety needs in relationships. I don't really need to say any more than that. Like, everybody has to respect each other, especially in close relationships. Number 4 is to give yourself permission to evolve. People change depending on stress, on hormones, on burnout, on confidence, on age and life stage. And you might find yourself becoming more introverted after burnout. You might find yourself becoming more extroverted when you're confident in a situation. You might find yourself being more selective as you mature. Allow yourself to evolve. And then finally, notice what genuinely energizes you, not what you think you should enjoy. Because loads of people force themselves into social styles that don't actually suit them. So just a couple of reflective questions to finish off with today. I'm sure you've identified yourself in the things that I've talked about today, but just a few reflective questions to ask yourself and maybe journal on. What social situations leave me feeling calm and connected? Which ones leave me drained or overstimulated? Which people feel energizing? And which interactions feel performative? Like, where do I feel like I'm not being myself? Do you know what I mean? the most important thing here, I'll put those in the show notes, those questions, in case you do want to spend some time journaling on them. And I'll also pop them in the Facebook group. But know yourself. Like, this is the most important thing here, is to know yourself and know that that is okay. Whatever needs you have with navigating social situations, that is okay. But remember that your partner, your friend, your group of friends, they don't necessarily feel the same, and that's okay too. Self-awareness is key here, so as we know what we personally need to manage. Okay, that's me. I am clocking off. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I always love talking about introvert and extrovert because I think it's so misunderstood. So let me know what you resonated with today. If you've learned something new, I'd really love to know what you enjoyed about this episode. So feel free to pop over and leave me a review on Apple. You can do this by heading to Love and Life, A Guide to a Positive Mindset on Apple. Don't click on an episode, just click on Love and Life, the title. Scroll down to underneath where all the episodes are listed, and then you'll see ratings and reviews, and you can write a review. Now, you have to be have an Apple device to be able to do this. That is the only way to leave a review, unfortunately. But you can also feedback on any episode that you hear. If you click on the episode, you can click the top link that says, let me know what you loved about the episode. And that sends me a message directly. Okay, thank you so much. I will see you next week when I will be 44. Oh my goodness. Okay, sending you so much love. Bye. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you could take a moment to subscribe, rate, and if you're listening on Apple, as 95% of you do, review. It really helps the podcast reach more people who are ready to shift their mindset and raise their vibration. And if you know someone who would benefit from today's episode, feel free to share it with them. Until next time, keep loving life and know that I'm sending you so much love.